Hey everybody, welcome to the Mother Figures podcast. I'm Katelyn Darkangelo, founder and co-owner of Figure, Midwestern wife, and girl mom. I'm a dual certified pregnancy and postpartum trainer, majored in exercise science from the University of Michigan, earned my master in management degree from Duke University, and have been coaching in the fitness industry for over a decade. This podcast dives into all things pregnancy and postpartum fitness, especially in how to navigate strength and intensity training in these seasons. Whether you're in it yourself, trying to get pregnant, or coaching this population, you're in the right place. I'm excited to share personal experiences, client stories, guest interviews, and evidence-based strategies to give you the guidance, insights, and clarity needed to navigate these seasons with confidence. And with that, let's get rolling. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Mother Figures podcast. Today, I want to give you all of my best tips when it comes to metabolic conditioning. So this is kind of talking about the structure of exercise and the intensity of exercise when it comes to things like timed intervals or AMRAP, so as many rounds or as many reps as possible, EMOMs, every minute on the minute. We're talking chippers, rounds for time, untimed strength circuits, kind of the common structures you would see in maybe like a F45 class or Orange Theory or a CrossFit class or even High Rocks, just talking about this higher intensity modality of fitness. So a lot of the tips and stuff that I will give a lot of times are things you see on Instagram too, is a lot of around specific movements and modifications or variations for specific strength exercises or specific movements themselves. But today I wanted to talk about just the overall general approach of metabolic conditioning or interval training, high intensity training, however you want to think about that, during seasons of pregnancy and postpartum, because they're actually like my favorite type of activity to do just for myself anyways. Like, I'm in the functional fitness world, but during pregnancy and postpartum, I think sometimes we think that we can't do these types of structures of workouts, where in reality, it's actually my favorite way to keep moms engaged and keep their fitness levels high during pregnancy and also return them to this level of training postpartum. So it's something I actively use in all of my programming, both in my app programs, in my in-person classes, in my personal training sessions. It's my favorite stuff. So I just wanted to give a bunch of my top tips around either coaching this type of training for your classes or clients, or if you are pregnant or postpartum yourself, ways that you can use these tips for your own training in the gym during these seasons. So in general, the mental approach to these exercises and this type of exercise, really the structure of exercise, is going to be the most important piece of this, because obviously, let's say you're at a CrossFit gym and you have an AMRAP scheduled for the day. Generally, in a non-pregnancy postpartum world, you're thinking like, go as hard as possible, no reps, like zero transition times. Let's see what score we can put on the board, and let's see if we can beat everybody else in class or beat your previous score. And that's really not the approach in pregnancy and postpartum most of the time that we're looking to see. So the biggest and hardest part, I think, for especially moms who are used to this type of training, is switching their mental approach to this type of exercise, switching from a like all out effort mindset to thinking of these structures as more of like working time, or just like recalibrate their brain to realize like they're not trying to hit any PRs. We're not trying to go balls to the wall. You can still hit high intensity, but if something starts to feel off, we're not pushing through that pain. So there's a difference of challenging yourself and going at your like current level of fitness, whether that be during pregnancy, postpartum, early pregnancy, late pregnancy. Like, there's, a whole range of spectrums where you could be in this season of life. But going from thinking about all out effort to creating this really healthy mindset around like, I want to challenge myself. I want to get a good workout in. I want to do what is favoring my body right now, but we're not trying to push through any symptoms just to get a good score on the board. So the best and hardest piece to train for either yourself or a client is that mental approach. Just making sure that they see this as working time, as a way to, either maintain fitness, improve fitness, establish a good fitness baseline when you're coming back postpartum, for instance, So that's number one. And then for specific types of structures, so one thing I like to do for EMOMs specifically, this is tip number 2. For EMOMs, I like to give rep ranges, especially if you are in a class setting, to help moms feel, number one, more included in the workout, and then also less defeated if they have to scale reps themselves. So let's say it's like a 10-minute EMOM and it's a high volume. So you're doing like 20 reps of something in a minute, and it's pretty hard to get that 20 minutes or 20 reps within that minute before the next minute starts. Instead of forcing a pregnant or postpartum mom, or you trying to hit that 20 reps and then feeling really frustrated if your body just can't keep up with that volume, in a class setting specifically, and honestly just in any setting, if it's personal training or whatever it may be, giving a full rep range. So maybe it's like 14 to 20 reps, so that everybody in the class, the people who are not pregnant or postpartum, can hit that 20 rep and really push themselves. But then the pregnant or postpartum athlete can hit that 14 rep range and still feel like included in the workout, still feel like they're giving a good effort and they are like honoring where their body is at. And so that's a really strong and helpful way to keep EMOMs as part of your training, especially during like pregnancy, when you are in that second trimester starting to feel the need to make some adjustments in your workouts. It still allows you to do everything that the class is doing and be excited and feel fulfilled after that workout session, but not go to the fullest capacity or highest intensity with that highest rep range that is given for the rest of the class. So that's EMOMs specifically. I like to use those a lot. For postpartum, same thing. Maybe their body just isn't at that full volume yet for that higher rep range. So giving that rep range again allows the postpartum mom who is just coming back to some of these movements to give them the ability to hit that lower rep range, still feel part of the class, still do what everybody else is doing, but it's more appropriate for their current fitness level. Number 3, for rounds for time specifically. So this would be like 4 rounds for time of maybe 3 or 4 different movements. So you're going, again, super fast, trying to get the work done in as little time as possible. For rounds for time, this can be a tough one when there's a lot of different fitness levels in a class setting. And so some people will be finishing really early, and then some people, like maybe it takes them like 10, 15 minutes more than the fastest group. So with rounds for time, I always will give a time cap to help give moms a limit on their fatigue. So they're not, maybe they get time capped instead of finishing the full rounds for time. And that is going to be just as much fatigue on their body that somebody that did finish, just because they're in a different season of life. And it just allows them to scale the pace within that time frame. So they know that there's a stopping limit. They know that there's a point in time that they are going to stop, versus pushing all the way maybe past or too far beyond their current threshold if there wasn't a time cap. So just making sure to give like a set time, again, in that rounds for time style workout, gives them a limit on their fatigue and then allows them to scale their pace within that time frame. So maybe they go a little bit slower, honoring where their body is currently at, instead of like feeling like they're going to like slow the class down, for instance. A lot of this is going to have to do with like group-based conditioning and group-based efforts. But obviously if you're working out by yourself at home, you can either give yourself a time cap, or maybe you just go slower and take longer. So totally up to you. Number 4 is chippers. So this is high volume work. There's a lot of different ways that chippers can be broken up. Sometimes you do all high volume reps of the first movement and then you move to the next one, and you can't move on until you finish all the reps of the first movement. Sometimes one of my more infamous workouts in my group classes is 100 rep chipper. So I'll have 5 or 6 different movements on the board. The goal is to hit 100 reps of all 5 or 6 movements within a 30-minute time cap. And you can break it up however you want. So you can go in whatever order you want with whatever rep ranges you want. So you can do all 100 of one move, then 20 of the next, and 30 of a different one, and kind of go back and forth. So in general, chippers are very, very high volume workouts. So for these, for pregnancy and postpartum, I would give the option or recommend to reduce reps, and to also set time caps for the reasons that I talked about above in the rounds for time. But reducing reps So you kind of can give either a rep range for your chipper, or what I'll do in a class setting is I'll explain the whole workout. Everybody will go off and do their own things. For those who are pregnant or postpartum, I will tell them, like, yes, this is what's on the board, but if you hit 40 reps out of, 100 and you're feeling gassed and like that's too much for you, you're good with 40 reps. Like, don't have a set expectation to hit the full rep capacity if you are pregnant and postpartum and start to feel the like extreme fatigue, the pelvic floor symptoms, all this stuff that I talked actually in my last podcast about, all the symptoms that guide exercise selections and exercise intensity. Know that about your body, know what's happening. And if you can't hit that highest rep range, no problem. You do whatever reps you need to do. So sometimes athletes or moms, they need to have almost somebody give them permission to scale, or else they'll feel like they're failing at that workout. And that's not a good feeling to have as a mom. Like, you don't want to like leave your gym feeling like you just like did half the stuff, and then that makes you feel like mentally bogged down. So I always try to give moms permission to not undercut themselves. I think moms, especially the ones that I work with a lot, they want to challenge themselves too much sometimes in a good way. But just some moms need that, like, somebody else to tell them like, hey, you're fine if you don't hit all the reps. You're fine if you go down in weight, honor where your body's at. And so there's a learning your client or learning yourself level that needs to come in when it comes to intensity training, because you want to still, again, get a good workout, do what's best for your body, strengthen your body, have good fitness, all this capacity stuff too. But there's also a level of being aware of what your body is currently capable of and honoring that. So that was one. So first was mental approach. Second was EMOMs. Third was rounds for time. Fourth was chippers. Fifth is just a tip that I use for coaching specifically. So in a class setting, I will explain the workout. I'll explain the structure. I'll explain the movements to the whole group. And then I will approach the pregnant or postpartum mom on the side and explain any further modifications or approaches that they need, so then they don't feel like they're being singled out by the coach in front of everybody. And then that allows sometimes a better connection with that client, or they are able to better tell me like what they're feeling that day, like if they had good sleep last night or their nutrition is off. And we kind of get to the bottom of like what is the intensity that you should be going at today for this specific workout, because that's going to change every day too. When you're pregnant and postpartum, both, phases of life, every day can be different. Every day normally is different, to be honest. So having that connection with your coach or with yourself, learning yourself and knowing what you have in the tank for that workout for that day. We want to, have the workout written up and then really tailor it to how you're feeling that day. Next one, in a pregnancy, like personal training setting specifically, when it comes to Metcon, interval training, all that stuff. If needed, we're gradually, in general, reducing intensity over time. And we're doing that generally by increasing the rest to work ratio of intervals specifically. So for instance, instead of doing like 1 minute of work to 20 seconds of rest, maybe we're doing a minute of work to 30 or 40 seconds of rest. So we're just giving ourselves more time to rest for how much work we're doing. And again, there's a bunch of ways that we can adjust the work to rest ratios overall. Another way to reduce intensity in the style of training would just be to decrease the duration. So we're still doing the AMRAP, but maybe instead of a 20-minute AMRAP, we're doing like a 12 to 15-minute AMRAP. So we're just decreasing the amount of time, again, because the pregnant body is already working on a daily basis harder than your general baseline body is. So maybe when you're doing a 20-minute AMRAP, you already feel like you're over your body's limit. And so we're just decreasing the amount of duration of the workout overall. We can also decrease, reps from a chipper and rounds for time and EMOMs, adjusting pace overall within these style of workouts. So we're still hitting the AMRAPs, we're still hitting the EMOMs, we're still hitting all this high intensity training style stuff, but we can, in general, during pregnancy, over the course of your pregnancy, increase how much rest time you're having in those intervals, decreasing the duration of the workout itself, reducing reps, and then just adjusting the pace overall. So there's a lot of big bucket ways that we can make these style of workouts more approachable for the pregnant mom. In vice versa, in postpartum personal training sessions, or just in general, like group classes, just knowing this about yourself or now learning it through this podcast today is kind of ways for you to approach or apply this stuff in your whatever workout style of stuff you like to do. So in postpartum, we're doing the opposite. So we're starting with shorter duration. So maybe we're starting with an 8-minute AMRAP. So in my postpartum class, I actually start with 4-minute AMRAPs, 2 movements back to back. And then we introduce longer AMRAPs. So then it goes to like 8 minutes and then maybe 12 minutes. And then we build back up to that 20-minute AMRAP or whatever it may be. So we're starting slow, we're starting short duration, and then we're building up over time. And then vice versa with the interval. So we're increasing the amount of work time to rest. So maybe we're starting with a 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, but then over time we're trying to build to a minute on, 30 seconds off, and holding that rest duration, shorter. So we're working with rest to work ratios, but in the opposite. Same thing with low reps to high reps. If we're trying to build up volume and capacity up into those higher rep chippers and rounds for time, things like that, we're starting with low reps and we're building up over time. And then we're also building in complexity with the movements that we're using within these style of workouts themselves as well. So pregnancy, we can change. In pregnancy and postpartum, we're changing the same variables, but in different ways. And while we're doing this, the primary thing is to be looking for symptoms, especially when it comes to pelvic floor and our core symptoms, but also general levels of fatigue, because we have to remember in pregnancy, our body is working really hard to grow a baby. In postpartum, we're working really hard to nourish a baby, and we have sleep considerations and lifestyle changes. So it's not just about this like linear approach down during pregnancy and then back up during postpartum. There's a lot of external factors outside of the gym that is playing into the level of intensity that we can hit during our Metcons and interval training during both of these seasons. So that was all of that. And then lastly, in general, something I strongly recommend, and this is going to be a preference thing overall, but something that I have found that I personally like and that my clients have worked really well with, is considering the movement combinations within these style of workouts. So traditionally, it's all over the board, but in CrossFit, for instance, you'll see a lot of workouts where like you hammer like one body part within a AMRAP, for instance, like barbell deadlifts into burpee over the bar. Like that's a lot of like posterior chain action. Instead of hammering out or doing like a circuit of like all upper body movements and then a circuit of all lower body movements, I do like to do that sometimes. But when you are pregnant and or postpartum, hitting the same muscle group and hammering that can have really hard effects on the soreness of your body the rest of the day. And it might just be less fatiguing on your body and less painful and less risk of like, spot specific pain, especially when it comes to like hips and back, like that can really throw you off. And it just might be more favorable also from a pelvic floor perspective and pain management perspective to program multiple muscle groups within a circuit or within these higher intensity sessions, especially because when we're doing higher intensity work, we're not focusing as much on this like slow connection, rep to breath kind of style training that is going to be super important. We still want to be doing that. That's the primary like importance during these seasons. So when we are hitting these, we generally are thinking less mentally about like, okay, engage my deep core, stack my ribs over my hips, lift the pelvic floor at this point, release at this point. Like there's a lot less time to think about that. And so combining that thought process with like also changing up the muscle groups within a circuit, it just allows us to have less fatigue, less like debilitating fatigue at least. And it's more favorable from a pelvic floor perspective to not just hammer the same like movement over and over and over again. So I like to just change things up and keep things pretty full body for all of my sessions. And another reason I like to keep things full body instead of hammering one muscle group all within like one workout is a lot of times our schedules during pregnancy and postpartum are more variable than they were prior to babies. So like we might skip a workout that was all lower body or all upper body, for instance, and we just hit up or lower body all on Monday. And so when comes Friday, if you have lower body again, you skipped a day because you had baby stuff going on, or someone's sick and someone didn't sleep, and it's just more. It's more rare to have a full week of like well-rounded workouts if you have them as like split muscle group days. So I generally, again, like to have just full body days just in case you do miss a day. You know that you're not just hammering out one muscle group like constantly. You get everything worked in one day. So less debilitating from a fatigue, better for pelvic floor, core in general, because we're not just hammering out one part that then kind of fatigues you out there. And then we, in general, get a better, more well-rounded training week if we do happen to miss a day in the gym. So I guess that's I guess one more piece that kind of goes into that like movement selection. We also want to think about this is when it comes to like group training as well. We want to think about movement variety, not movement modification. So for instance, if there is a class workout that's like high volume chippers, and let's say it's like sit-ups is one of the movements, we don't have to do a one-to-one replacement of that movement. So we don't have to think of, oh, what's like a core move that we can do within this workout that's like sit-ups. You can do that, or you can change it for something completely different. Like sometimes I'll do like bike calories or shoulder taps or like TRX rows, something that is going to be favorable for the pregnant and postpartum core that may not look anything like a sit-up. So when you are thinking about ways to keep these high intensity workout styles and structures in your workouts, sometimes that will involve changing some of the movement patterns themselves, but you don't have to think of everything as like modifications. You can just think of them as movement alternatives and what is a better alternative that is going to suit your pregnant or postpartum body, while still keeping you involved in the workout that is programmed. So just another thought, something to add to that. So hopefully that helps. Again, we talked about the mental approach, encouraging them to think about this, or encouraging you to think about this as like a working time versus all out efforts. We're trying to give rep ranges during EMOMs. We are trying to give time caps during rounds for time and maybe reduced reps as well for chippers. In class settings, you're hopefully being approached, or if you are a coach, you are approaching your pregnant and postpartum clients on the side, so you can make sure we go through a game plan depending on how you personally feel that day. In pregnancy, we're gradually reducing intensity during these same style workouts over time, when it comes to rest to work ratios, decreasing duration, reps, adjusting pace, and then the vice versa in the postpartum time period. And then we are kind of changing up things in terms of movement selection, trying to keep things more well-rounded, full body, so we're not hammering fatigue and like increasing the risk of pain points, and also using alternatives, not just modifications, to allow us to continue to do these types of structures throughout pregnancy and postpartum. So hopefully all of that can help you. Again, these are my favorite types of workouts. It's kind of my personal preference. Obviously, everyone has their fun ways that they like to exercise and keep their fitness high, but I love being able to coach pregnant and postpartum moms through these style of exercises throughout pregnancy and postpartum, because it helps them feel like themselves longer. It's a great way to train. It's a great way to keep your fitness level high and your cardio capacity. And it's also very functional, so you can have your whole body moving. And that all has really great effects for your pregnancy outcomes, your baby. There's a lot of cool studies coming out of moms who worked out during their pregnancy and the long-term effects that it has on the baby's development. I'll have to do a whole podcast on that. That would be an interesting one. And then postpartum, it just helps moms come back to life postpartum when they have like this like good challenge, something that feels like themselves, something that feels normal in a time period that feels really chaotic. So these are, I love helping moms figure out ways to keep this kind of training into their routine so we can just have happier moms overall. So with that, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Mother Figures podcast. If these episodes help or resonate with you in any way, it would be so helpful to the show if you could leave a review so we can get this into more moms' hands. And if you're looking for even more guidance and direction when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum fitness, I got you covered. My Mother Figures app subscription includes my Figure Pregnancy and Figure Postpartum workout programs, in addition to our general fitness programs. You'll get the day-by-day workouts you need to help you feel strong, pain-free, and labor-ready during pregnancy, and also the recovery, strength, and progressions you'll need to get back to the activities you love, full of strength and without symptoms after baby arrives. If you're local to the Brighton, Michigan area, I also host daily women's functional fitness classes, a 6-week postpartum return to fitness course, and pregnancy and postpartum consultation sessions. For those who are providers, coaches, or practitioners in the space, I hold a live Mother Figures certification course that equips you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to train and work with this population. For information on all of these services and programs, make sure to check out fitisgettingreal.com/moms or head to the show notes for the direct link. I'm so thankful that you tuned in today's episode, and I will catch you next time.